Hey everyone, our regularly scheduled Final Fantasy VI episode will be out later this week, but in the meantime, check out this selection from our Level Up podcast on our Patreon-only feed. You can check out the Level Up podcast, our Square Roots Versus episodes, and our revival of Instant Classic on our Patreon feed. You can check us out at patreon.com/Square Roots Podcast. Enjoy, everyone.
Good morning, and welcome to Sierra Roots, the classic Sierra Games podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa, and I'm joined by John Brandon.
Oh, why, hello there, Vanessa. It's so nice to see you this morning.
And Natalie.
And my pleasure as always. Or for the first time.
How we should say your last name?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I realized I didn't know it.
It's Juhasz. It's a silent J.
Juhasz.
It means
okay.
shepherd.
Oh.
And
well, that's lovely.
Yes. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Sierra Games.
Oh, it's my favorite topic.
As our listeners already know, Sierra Games was the dominant point-and-click King's Quest-based adventures provider of the 1990s.
Yes. They really originated the genre, and we feel it is our duty to explore a much-maligned company and show why they were great.
Yes. It's unusual to have a company that is so maligned by a particular group of people and yet beloved by another.
I wonder what other examples in culture there could be of this.
I can't think of anything.
It's true. It's true. Sorry.
Well, we've prepared 3 segments for our listeners this week. I think that you'll find them all very interesting. And John, why don't you kick us off?
Part 1, Best and Worst. Today on Sierra Roots, we're going to talk about the best and worst things that have come out of Sierra Online, everyone's favorite premier point-and-click plus texty-typey adventure game company. Now, there has been a lot of good out of this company and a lot of bad. I think Sierra, in modern gaming memeness, is known most for its Gabriel Knight 3 puzzle involving a mustache and cat hair and a passport.
I have done this puzzle in real life. I used to have a black cat. I brushed it. I wore the mustache.
Did you change your passport photo to match?
I did not have a passport at that time, but if I did, I would have.
Now, this is known as a worst moment in gaming history, and also sort of a reason why Sierra games are not as good as LucasArts games, which I feel is unfair. So could you tell me the context of this puzzle from Gabriel Knight 3, Natalie?
Yes, well, you see, there is a segment in the game where Gabriel requires the use of a motor vehicle or motorcycle to get around a town called Rennes-le-Château, and unfortunately all the bikes have been reserved for people doing a tour. Now, Gabriel has had the stroke of luck to know one of the people on the tour, a friend of his from New Orleans. Now, he's decided that he is going to impersonate this person and realizes there are some changes that need to be made, as Gabriel is tall, blonde, and clean-shaven, while his friend is short, fat, and a little bit 5 o'clock shadowy, I'm going to say.
Okay.
So he's decided to create what he likes to call, and what the Prima Guide likes to call, a Mosley outfit. To do this, he has decided to get a hat to cover up his hair, a gold blazer that Mosley wore most of Gabriel Knight 1, even though he's never seen wearing it in Gabriel Knight 3. For some reason, he brought it along to him to his holiday. And to disguise the differences in their faces, which there are really many, he has decided to put a mustache on himself to disguise the fact that their faces don't match. Now, the interesting thing is that neither of them have black hair, and yet he uses a black Sharpie on his friend's passport, while also tricking his friend by giving him candy by throwing it on a table in front of him and calling him down so that he stops and sticks his bottom out into the air for his friend just to walk by and take the passport out of his butt pocket.
I think we have all run into a situation where we encounter some sort of food on a table and bend at a 90-degree angle to obtain the food and put it into our mouth.
Yes. But, so yes, and then he decided that he needed a mustache, and while he used a Sharpie on the passport, he decided a Sharpie on the face would not do just as well. He needed some sort of fur. We found cat fur, but how would one stick cat fur to one's face?
Glue.
He did not have any glue, but he did have maple syrup. The sweetest of adhesives.
So is that the end of this puzzle line?
It is. I mean, he does go and speak to the guy who's renting it, Monsieur Bigot, and Monsieur Bigot says, "Okay, you take the bike. You go now."
Have you spoken to Mr. Biggle before without the mustache and hat and blazer?
Yes, you had.
Okay.
Which is why the puzzle does not officially hold up.
Do you for this puzzle, did you figure this out on your own, or did you have to look at a guide?
Yes, I worked it out on my own. I can tell you it was I got it the year that it I got it the day that it came out. Our PC did not run it very well. Loading into every scene took half an hour, and I finished the game anyway.
Wow.
That's dedication.
Yes, because I loved Gabriel so much. So much.
I never actually played this Gabriel Knight 3. Have you, Vanessa?
I have not. I think the Gabriel Knight series is the one that I'm sort of missing from my Sierra canon.
Wow, because I would consider Gabriel Knight 1 probably the best Sierra game. So, in terms of plotting and puzzle design, stay clear of the enhanced 20-year remastered version, because the 3D just kind of sucks out all the tension out of it. And they had some hidden object puzzles, which, no.
Oh, no.
No.
That's a mini game.
Now, for one of my best, because let's talk about the best side of Sierra. I think in the game Space Quest 4, there is a time travel mechanic where you go back through previous Space Quest games. And this was a 1991 VGA adventure, so 256 colors. And when you time travel to the earlier games, it goes back to the earlier graphical style, except you're still this detailed character and you're going through like really ugly old Sierra games as a joke. And I just think it's one of the most clever moments of like meta commentary and just silliness that I don't think you really see any games do now, except the one game that has done this is Wolfenstein the New Order and Old Blood and New Colossus and all that. Those have done this kind of... I don't know if you've played those games, but you can go to the past. Wolfenstein, he gets flashbacks to his being in jail, and it's just those old levels. Except that you have like your new guns, like so your hand is 3D, but the levels are these old like Wolfenstein 3D levels. It's pretty fun.
I'm having a vague recollection of the most recent King's Quest game, where I think there's a segment in one of the chapters where you do regress into earlier versions of the game for like a segment of it when Graham is on some psychotropic drugs.
Yes, that's correct.
I love that section.
We go from our 3D rendered Graham back to the pixelated Graham.
And a couple of versions in between. Ripped Graham.
Well, that's entertaining.
And there are one or two moments in the LucasArts franchise Monkey Island where Guybrush experiences similar phenomena. I'm thinking in particular of a moment in Monkey Island 3 where Guybrush pokes his head through a hole and emerges in Monkey Island 1, although all he can do at that point is look around.
Okay. Well, that's fun. Isn't that fun, Vanessa?
It is fun. It's fun.
Would you have a best or worst Sierra moment you'd like to share?
I would. My favorite Sierra moment, because as regular listeners will know, I'm a little bit of a beat freak. I love music and rhythm, is in Laura Bow 2, where she visits the speakeasy and we are treated to the archaeologist song.
Oh, yes.
A classic.
A classic.
She just wants to keep that man's artifacts warm. She'll do anything. She'll dig in castles big and small.
Now, we actually have a... this episode is going up on our Patreon-only feed for now. I think I might check in to see if we can throw it on the regular feed in a month or two. Because it's always fun to share.
It is fun to share.
Yes. And care.
We have a patron who is an archaeologist.
I have a sister-in-law who's an archaeologist.
She was horrified at the idea of someone trying to keep her artifacts warm by body heat. She feels they should be in a temperature-controlled shelf with humidity controlled and, not having extreme highs or low temperature-wise to preserve the artifacts.
I do believe, though, that 1926 was a different time in archaeology, though. They didn't know any better.
True. And I don't want to, perhaps if there are kids in the room, you should dismiss them. But
oh my!
All right, I'll give our listeners a moment to do that.
Okay.
I believe that it's
Are they
possible.
all gone
yet? I hope so. I hope so.
Okay.
I do believe it's possible that the keeping the artifacts warm may have been an entendre.
Oh, for what?
Oh no!
Sorry,
Good
pardon?
heavens!
John, I mean, I think that I'll leave that to the listeners to work out for themselves, and you
maybe
can bring your children
hiding
back
of some
in.
sausages. I'm just.
Oh my!
Yes.
Oh.
I think my chest is turning a little pink. I'm blushing so hard.
What would you call a
worse
Actually,
moment?
well, before we get into that, why do you think the archaeologist song was such a defining moment of Sierra Games to you, Vanessa?
Well, I think that using music to create a sense of place and time is always a very powerful tool in any creator's tool belt, be it film or game. And I also enjoyed the unexpectedness of it. Everyone likes a nice surprise.
Indeed.
And it was a surprising and delightful event to hear a fully voiced song. Lorna Bains was one of the first fully voiced Sierra games, and
we wouldn't have vocal
nice
talents.
that
We wouldn't have vocal talents
Yeah.
again until King's Quest VI, I think it was.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I played it on the disc version. I did not have the CD-ROM version.
Well, interesting you say that. I believe Lorna Bains 2, the archaeologist song, was the only voiced piece on the floppy disk.
It's true. And her screams. I
Fun
believe her
story.
screams were...
That's still MIDI. That's still surprisingly MIDI because I have a broken MIDI version of the game where parts of the MIDI aren't included, and her scream turns into a train wreck. It's breathtaking.
Oh,
I have a video on my channel where me and a couple of friends played through this broken MIDI version, and it's
a powerful
breathtaking.
metaphor.
Yes.
I didn't actually have a sound card until like 1997 or something.
That's a ridiculously long time. Windows 95 was out, and it was a requirement.
Well, that was the first time we had a computer that had a CD-ROM as well. So we were very behind the times PC-wise. And I didn't have an up-to-date PC that could play the latest games until 2018.
Wow.
That's this year.
Yeah.
That is this year, yes.
Did either of you ever experience the phenomenon in early gaming where it would not have audio, but your gaming tower or computer tower would occasionally beep
Oh, yes.
at events during the game?
Yes.
Well, these games all had a PC speaker score, which I fondly remember.
Being haunted by it.
Oh, they're great. Like the Colonel's Bequest had a fantastic PC speaker soundtrack, I felt.
That the Colonel's Bequest being the first in the Lorna Bains series for those of our listeners who are not familiar.
It's kind of strange going back now and hearing I think usually when you play it, it's some kind of MIDI ad-lib or Sound Blaster version, like when you play them on good old games. And it doesn't feel quite the same not having the bloop, 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 bloop. You know, it's adds notes where you don't think there should be notes, perhaps.
Yes, there's a website called Quest Studios where they host all versions of the Sierra music, including some more up-to-date versions with FLACs and OGs, where they've recorded the best quality version based on the MIDI tracks.
Oh, okay.
And
they're
great.
Because
I listen to those a lot.
I think even now it's hard to get a good version of the Roland. Like, I think that Roland emulation isn't perfect. And no one I knew had a Roland sound card because those were like thousands of dollars,
Yeah,
I think.
I think the Scum VM does a pretty decent job these days of that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. Maybe, Natalie, would you like to talk about a best or worst Sierra moment?
Oh, I have so many.
Oh, boy.
I'll start with my worst moment. There's a moment in the game Pepper's Adventures in Time, and I'm not talking about the art style in that game, although that it's very alternative. Sierra ran a short competition at the time where they digitized the voices of 2 children and put them inside the game, which, considering the game is a comic style, these 2 gigantic digitized faces of these children that walk into this screen, where the villain walks in and steals their money and their food and then kicks the young one in the shins before leaving.
Oh dear.
So we have these poorly digitized faces on cartoon bodies that are then forced to cry.
Oh,
no. It's breathtakingly bad. Oh, breathtakingly bad.
Have you seen the cartoon Angela Anaconda?
It's the poor man's Angela Anaconda. It is a very poor man's Angela Anaconda.
Some disturbing stuff.
Yes, but not quite as disturbing as some of my favourite moments of Sierra games. Both of these are both from FMV games. So there's a segment in Gabriel Knight 2 where Gabriel is searching for a werewolf, and he comes across... Well, he's got a friend called Van Gloer who says, "I think I saw something in that cave." Gabriel goes in there, and there's another person that he's met along his way called Mr. Von Zell, or Herr Von Zell, since they are in Germany. Now, he has recently just gone from being a werewolf to being a human in a cave, and he has eaten a beast or person, and he's supposed to look like he's got blood all over his face, but it actually looks like a child has given him a lipstick makeover, and he has tried to enhance his lips look, and it's breathtaking. It's one of those.
Sounds wonderful.
It's one of those moments that probably you should have been scared, but instead I laughed, and I still laugh to this day. I do enjoy when a game gives me a good chuckle. But in the more sincere versions of a best version, it has to do with music, and this is in Gabriel Knight 1, where Gabriel is in the depths of a secret voodoo honfort in Africa. He gets around, to put it mildly, and there's a moment where suddenly this entirely deserted place, where you've been surrounded by these mud sculptures of monsters, suddenly comes to life. And the music during this segment psychs me out so much that even to this day when I play through that segment, it takes me at least 20 times to get through it, even though I know exactly what to do. It's just the atmosphere, the look, the music. It makes this perfect moment of tension that, having played the game across 20... Oh my god, I think I'm at 25 years. No, it'd have to be less because Gabriel Knight hasn't been quite out that long. No, it is more than 20 years. I've just gotten lost to time.
93? 94, right?
No, I think
Just thinking about this music disorients you.
Yes, it does.
If Gabriel Knight had a baby, that baby would be 25 years old now.
Oh my god. Do you know how many fanfics I've written about that in my head?
Gabriel taking care of his grandchild.
Well, no, there's... I don't want to give spoilers since both of you have admitted that you don't know much about Gabriel Knight, and I think that by any playthrough of it, you guys will love it. Or I have Let's Plays of all three of them. Just saying. Including a version where me and some friends got together and just replaced all the lines with our own.
I finished Gabriel Knight 1 and 2, but I've never played 3.
Well, 3 is currently until August 13th, which may be after our listeners have a chance to listen, but on the Steam store, it is 35% off. It can be purchased for $3.89 American.
Nice.
Oh, that's a good deal. That's nice. It's nice when Steam has good product on for good prices.
It is nice.
Now, was there another best or worst moment you'd like to share with us, Natalie?
There's a moment in Phantasmagoria where a certain person's face is torn apart. I love it. I love that you can see her teeth fly out of her head as it happens.
Is that one of the victims, or is that the player character?
That's the player character.
Okay.
It feels like real vindication by that point as well.
But that is a bad ending, right?
It is a bad ending, but
fail state.
You know, when you come across certain characters and you know you're going to get to the good ending, sometimes coming across a bad ending, which is something that Sierra gave to us where a lot of other games would have just given us, you know, dead ends where we were just stuck until we work something out. They can be cathartic for the moment. Sometimes you just really want to see this character that you've not got to the goal just to cark it.
Yeah, Sierra was never afraid of killing off its protagonists in various grisly ways.
Well, I would say that probably that to them, and I would partially agree with this, that if there's no death or failed states, there's no real tension to a scene. Because a life without consequence, or rather a story without consequence, has no real stakes.
I do remember in Lorna Bains 1, the most grisly death was if you interacted with the armor in the lobby, where the axe falls on you and cuts you very neatly in quite the interesting sprite animation. Cleaves you in two, and you see her insides, like as if she is a bisected a specimen. Like you see her brain and skull and everything. For a little small 2D sprite, but it was horrifying as a 12-year-old, I think, or 11-year-old.
I think we all learned not to examine suits of armor from that game.
I think we also learned not to play murder mystery games before we were 10, in my case.
Oh, my.
I was 7. I bought it myself.
How did the shower scene affect you then?
I played Colonel's Bequest later. I had Lorna Bains 2 first. And I dreamt about Ziggy's head for many weeks.
Oh, really? Oh, I think I was 13 when that came out, so I was old enough for that.
Ziggy's head.
And also, I think I had a brief dream trouble as well when playing through Gabriel Knight, because again, I was 7, with when Crash died.
Oh, I don't remember. I actually don't remember who Crash was.
So Crash was a kind of a snitch that occasionally Mosley would call in. And after he had his last encounter with them, Gabriel realized he was mixed up in the voodoo business. And after he finally got Crash to talk to him, Crash suddenly said, "Can't you see I'm sick, man?" And then he turned blue and died.
Oh.
Oh, no.
Unexpected and...
gruesome.
Yeah, I think it does prove that old adage that snitches do get stitches.
Oh,
it's
worse.
True. Well, I think that's. Actually, there was one. Wasn't there a corporate moment you wanted to?
Yes, very
discuss?
briefly, and probably the one that was most catastrophic to Sierra as we know it. Who knows? It might have continued strong and brave and still be going today if this hadn't have occurred. Ken Williams sold the business. Bit of a surprise to a lot of people working there.
Mm-hmm. Ken Williams was the owner and spouse of the chief creative force in Sierra, Roberta Williams.
El Presidente, as I like to call him occasionally. In part of that, they threw most of the assets just into the bin. The only way that we have some of the assets now is that some ex-employees and some other people did some dumpster diving before the garbage trucks came.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And what motivated this sale?
I would say greed. I mean, I'm not 100% certain on that. I think they were having some sale issues in terms of going into 3D. King's Quest 8 is a terrible, terrible game.
Indeed.
And, Quest for Glory 5 was an underachiever, but then, it was largely finished off by people, doing it practically for free at that point.
Oh, wow.
That they just, like, it had taken too long and was over budget, and so they were like, well, we just want to get it out. A little bit of a buggy mess, but still a decent, worthwhile playing game, and Gabriel Knight 3 was okay. I mean, compared to most of their other 3D games. And I suppose that at that point, the only real good sellers they had at that time was Half-Life and the SWAT games. The SWAT games probably were the high achievers at that point.
Right.
And, I think that Ken just kind of thought that the writing was on the wall and decided just to go ahead with it. Thought he had a good deal. Bit of a weird deal, though, that they weren't allowed to, actors in the similar roles to what they had for, like, several years. I think it's only recently, the past 5-10 years, that they've actually been allowed to be back in those roles, and they've both decided that they're just, past it. It's not their time to come back into it. I think their son is a game developer, though.
Oh. That's cool.
Chris Williams, I think. Odd Mansion, although I don't think that game's running at the moment.
I do want to check out the new game by Laurie and Cole, or was it Laurie Ann?
Do you
and
have any other questions at this time?
Sorry? Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes?
I can hear both of you.
Oh, good.
Excellent.
We had a moment.
Oh. I was wanting to check out the new game by, I'm trying to remember, is it Laurie Ann and something Cole?
Laurie and Corey Cole, which is the greatest married couple's name ever, if you ask me. Although I have seen a Mario and Maria before, which is baffling. but yeah, so they recently just released a new game, and I backed
sort of a spiritual successor to Quest for Glory.
Yes. The name, I'm blanking on the name. Why am I blanking on the name?
Hero U.
Hero U, yes, because I backed it. I don't know why. We all have those moments. I haven't had that much time for it. I am in the process of moving, so I have not had a lot of time to devote to it, but it seems to be doing really well. And
is it a Diablo-style game, or is it a adventure game? It was hard to tell from the pictures.
So I admit I didn't back in the first round of funding for that, because when I saw that it was somewhat slightly tile-based at that point, I was just entirely turned off it. But I think I think it is a little bit closer to its Quest for Glory 5 fighting style, but a little bit tile-driven. But it is still an adventure game when it comes to talking and the options that you have in talking and the options that they give you in actually interacting with things.
Okay,
and then,
that sounds fun.
And here's a cat.
There is a Porky here. She has come to join us.
Thank you for joining us, Porky.
Yes. And your thoughts on Hero U, Porky?
She's choosing not to speak until she's played it.
Oh, yes. A wise option.
Yeah. Now, perhaps we should proceed into part 2, Vanessa's reporting.
Yes, I'm pleased this week to bring listeners a preview of Square Root's new ongoing podcast, Investigations into Phantasmagoria. And here's a clip. On August 24th, 1995, popular mystery novelist and her husband moved into a mansion in a small coastal town of Maine, hoping to find inspiration for her next work. The novelist, Adrian Delaney, and the husband, Don Gordon, had apparently a perfect marriage. The mansion, formerly the home of 19th century magician Zoltan Karnosevich, felt right out of one of Adrian's books. Unfortunately, so did the events that followed. Weeks after the move, 4 people would be dead, including Dawn. On Square Root's new ongoing podcast, join me as I travel to Maine to talk to the surviving residents, examine the architecture of the Carno Mansion, and attempt to make sense of what happened to Dawn, I'll also discover eerie similarities between the terrible deaths in 1995 and events in the life of the home's former owner. Let me redo that. I'll also discover eerie similarities between the terrible deaths in 1995 and events in the life of the home's former owner, Carno. Coincidence or something more?
Were those murders ever solved?
Well, John, that's part of what we will discover over our 12-episode arc as I investigate this event. Some people would not consider them to be murders at all. There's some disagreement as to whether or not some of these deaths were natural causes.
Or just grisly accidents.
Or just very, very grisly accidents.
Death by misadventure is my favorite.
Well, I do remember that Carno famously stated that his wife, who was the botanist, she actually really liked plants so much she tried to grow one in her mouth.
That's correct. In fact,
he tried to get it out of it, I think, with a trowel at some point.
That's correct. Carno, that was his first wife that you're
Hortensia.
referring to, and not to give too much away because I think there are a lot of surprises that the listeners can look forward to. That was not Carno's last marriage by any means.
Yeah, I understand that he was a very available, wealthy bachelor and attractive to women. Also a magician, which is incredibly attractive.
And I think he had one of the first... Oh, sorry.
Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think he had one of the first massage beds out there.
Oh, we've lost you for a moment, Natalie.
Oh, dear.
Natalie, our foreign correspondent has disappeared momentarily.
No?
We're having satellite issues, I believe.
Yes.
I'm
sure she will reemerge.
But yes, Carno was very well known for his show Phantasmagoria, which is where the title of our podcast comes from.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you feel you will be placing yourself in any danger by visiting this castle and re-examining these perhaps unresolved murders?
Well, the castle itself has been held in public trust by the state since Adrian Delaney vacated it. So really for about 25 years, it's been vacant. The town has done some maintenance because it is a historical site. There's a small foundation that raises funds for its upkeep. So I think the only danger would be that perhaps the house is not as structurally sound as it once was, but the listeners will find in episode 4 when I do actually enter the manor with the help of local architects and actually the mayor of the town was gracious enough to join us. We wore hard hats and carried very strong flashlights and took precautions.
Oh. Well, we've lost our foreign correspondent. I hope she does return, but yeah, I'm very afraid for you.
Oh,
I've heard of misadventures by many visitors to this castle. I feel you are making a terrible mistake both for yourself and for Square Roots as a whole. Because if we lose you, we will be losing a pillar of our media empire.
Oh, well, thank you, John. That's very kind of you to say. I will say that I did at one point speak to Adrian herself. I don't want to reveal the context in which I did that, lest I give too much away, but I don't believe that she or anyone else that I interviewed for this show would be in a position to do any harm.
Now, was she still wearing her comfortable mom jeans?
Yes, Adrian has a very unique style. She wears very high-waisted pants. She typically wears pairs it with some sort of blouse. She has long blonde hair, which she rather violently brushes. She did this several times when I was speaking with her, and I was surprised because her hair was already pretty well kept. She also has a habit of just standing in one place in sort of an idle fashion for several minutes at a time until it occurs to her to perhaps move or interact with an object.
That is an unusual, but she's an author, right? Or was she an author? Yeah, she was an author. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's, well, is there anything else you want to tease our listeners about your investigation?
I would say that, really what came to light, when I was investigating this, originally I was focused on Adrian, as the survivor of these events. But really the town and the mansion itself feel like, characters, if you will, in this story. Mm-hmm. The town has many colorful residents, and to them, the Corvo Manor and the events that happened there have really impacted their lives. So I spoke with many people who were just perhaps connected with the events in a tertiary way, but the impact of those deaths has really lingered to this day in that town.
I never quite received what would you call that? A persuasive explanation from what's his name? Corvo? No. What's the name of the magician?
Yeah, that was Carno.
Carno, on how his wife accidentally got her own. Was it that she got her own organs removed and fed to her, or did she stuff her own face with tripe until she died? I can't remember.
I believe that you were referring to Regina.
Mm-hmm.
Who was his fourth wife. She was a notorious foodie, a gourmand. She was very interested in all kinds of edible meats and plants and other items. And she unfortunately asphyxiated when she was dining on animal entrails, which to us perhaps seems unusual, but it is common in Scotland and other parts of the world, and was not unusual to see on a table in the 19th century.
I received a message from Natalie. Let me just respond to it momentarily.
Please take your time.
Jim, feel free to remove this from the podcast if you like.
But yes, as I looked at the residents, we've mentioned his first wife, who was perhaps overly enthusiastic botanist. He then married Victoria, a charming woman, but unfortunately struggled with alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And Lenora, who was very gregarious and known for her conversation skills. Again, I don't want to give too much away. Obviously, all of these people are deceased by this point, but many of them lived abridged lives.
It does sound like a wonderful mystery for you to unravel. Do you find yourself being drawn to what's his name? Cosmo?
Carno, I believe.
Sorry, pardon me.
I examined several archival documents related to Carno, including posters from his shows, some of his tricks. He was a designer of his own magical tricks and known for his escapism. I would say that he's a very compelling figure. I don't know why he is not more widely celebrated, perhaps because his career was a little bit short, but he really was a Houdini in his time. Very handsome, well put together, the famous magician's tuxedo. He enjoyed cravats. He really had a taste for fine clothing and fine living. And in fact, he performed up until his death. His mansion has a full theater, and the stage was designed to accommodate his tricks, and he would just invite the townspeople to come and watch his shows.
Now, just upon reading about not Corvo, Cosmo?
Carno.
Pardon me. Just reading about Carno this much, I just feel like, one, I have purchased a silk cape to wear. Mm-hmm. I hope you like this. And also, Vanessa, he's just misunderstood, Vanessa. You aren't, just leave me alone.
Oh.
I have to study this more and read up more about this. You're getting this all wrong.
Oh dear.
Leave me alone.
Oh.
Vanessa, as your new friend, you should leave him.
Mm-hmm. I think I may spend some time exploring my own home until John has recovered his senses.
Oh, I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry. This will never happen again.
It's interesting, John. A lot of people reported to me feeling a strong connection to Carno. Perhaps just his myth, his legend, his life. They really see Carno as a figure that they relate to very, very closely.
These aren't mere tricks, Vanessa. These are illusions.
Oh, of course. Every artist must be assuaged of his beliefs, but I've missed quite a bit. But one thing I've always that I've asked myself upon reading these newspaper articles upon this mystery is, who sold the house? Who owned the house? Who took the money the money was obtained from?
And, the records really indicate a direct line from Carno, who met his death in the 19th century, to Adrian, who purchased it, as I mentioned, in 1995. So I did do some deep diving into just the housing registry practices in this town in Maine, as well as try to trace the ownership. And as I explained to John, the house is currently held in trust by the state and maintained by a small foundation.
And sold for $1, I'm imagining, to Adrian and her husband, Don Gordon and Adrian Delaney. Interesting choice that they decided not to share a last name.
It is. I think that Adrian was a very, and still is, a very independent woman. She's an introvert. She spends a lot of time by herself as an author. And she, I think that she just believed what she was told about the house, which is that it was in some disrepair. And it's not unusual for homes that are protected by historical preservation laws to be sold for perhaps under their value, with the understanding that the new owners will maintain the home.
Do you believe... do go ahead, Natalie.
I was just going to say, I was a bit surprised that with the amount of locked doors that we found on the premises that was found on the premises, that they decided not to get a locksmith in.
Yes, Adrian, when I did spoke to her, she did explain to me that although she had legally purchased the home, she never felt ownership of it completely. So when she was living there, she did encounter several locked doors and closed off spaces, and rather than hiring someone to open the doors, or perhaps even just with consideration for the framing of the home, obtaining an axe or some other item to pry open the door, because again, this was her property. She was fairly content to just let those doors remain locked until she discovered where the previous owners had kept the keys or other methods for opening the doors.
And you were going to say, John?
I was just going to say, do you believe her, I don't want to spoil future revelations on the podcast, her statements about the untimely end of her own husband?
It's, there is a lot of controversy surrounding Adrian. There are people who believe that she took particular actions in self-defense. There are people who believe that, as we discussed before, the home was just unsafe and several accidents occurred there. And there are people who believe that Adrian perhaps related too strongly to some of the antagonists in her mystery novel and had some sort of mental collapse. And so I, at the end of the series, reach my own conclusions. I don't think that I'll be able to present anything concrete enough for there to kind of put to rest these controversies, but I believe that I will give our listeners enough information about what happened to form their own conclusions as well.
Yeah, especially since I understand Don's body still has not been recovered. I believe Adrian said that the ground opened up and swallowed him down.
Oh my!
Yes, that was Adrian's initial statement to responding officers, and many people believe her story and feel that the home was perhaps atop a sinkhole or was otherwise geographically unsound. Some people believe that Don is not deceased at all and that he simply left his wife, who was having increasingly disturbing mental breakdowns.
One final statement I want to make about Adrian and Don is Adrian is trying to destroy us. I mean him. And she will pay for what she has done to his legacy.
Yeah,
his legacy.
That's an excellent point, John. And listeners who are interested in perhaps learning a little bit more about these events, I believe that Steam has created sort of a reenactment of what has occurred at this manor, and the actress who they have hired to portray Adrian, very similar to the real Adrian.
I believe that she was also married to her Don for a period of time as well, but the marriage fell apart.
Oh, really?
Yes, for some reason. And I believe that Don also runs the Facebook Phantasmagoria fan page these days.
So, again, perhaps another clue as to the fate of Don. Although, of course, these are just actors in the Steam portrayal. They should not be confused with the real people involved in these events.
Of course, of course. All right, we're moving on. Sierra Roots will present part 3, Natalie's story.
Oh, what a pleasant way of putting that.
Yes. Natalie, what would you like to talk to us about today on Square Roots?
Well, I suppose...
Or Sierra Roots.
Yes, well, I suppose since we were talking about my story, we've mentioned in the past that a special lady had touched all of our lives at some point, and her name is Lorna Bains. I took a character study of her a couple of years back, and I realized a couple of things about her, that as much as I loved her, she's an idiot.
Oh, no.
Yes, her stories are near and dear to my heart, but she stumbles into everything. She doesn't really seem to know what she's doing at all. She has visions of her ghost dad, even though he's alive. There's just so many things that I questioned about her when I thought about it. And there's nothing more poignant than a moment right near the end of Lorna Bains 2, the Dagger of Omen-Ra, where she comes across the Countess Lavinia Wardolph Carlton, or as I like to call her, the Countess Water Closet. She has been tied up upon a person of great importance, desk. My favourite character of that game, Olympia Miklos. And
Oh my.
she comes up to the Countess, who has gone very blue in the face, and she says, Countess, are you feeling all right? The Countess has already died. And she has left the building in one way. And for a moment there, you just go, Laura, she's dead. And she carries on this for maybe a minute before she suddenly realizes what's happened. So when I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to get into game design, I thought about characters that I liked, and that's when I was doing this study upon Lorna Bains, because as we know, there was only 2 games in that series, and I often wondered what a third would look like. And that's when I realized I love Laura. I don't like her. And I started to build a new character archetype out of it that was like an anti-Laura. In the beginning of Lorna Bains 2, she has a co-worker who mispronounces her name as Lorna Bains. And I took it a little bit further and came up with Lorna Bains. Now, Lorna Bains is very different from Lorna Bains, but there are some similar roots there. They're both Southern belles. Laura is from Louisiana. Meanwhile, Lorna is from Tallahassee, Florida.
Oh my.
Yes.
Very different vibe.
Yes, a very different vibe. And it's the 1930s instead of the 1920s. And instead of her father being a cop, her father is a crook.
Oh.
Oh,
And
Twist.
so it just kind of turned like, rather than, if Lorna comes across a murder, the first thing she's not thinking about is, how to put this. Okay, Laura comes up to a murder and she goes, first she tries to render assistance to someone who's already clearly dead. And then she starts looking for clues. Lorna's not going to go straight away going, I don't think this person's dead. I'm going to give him help. It's, this person is dead. Let's see what's on them. I might want to keep it for myself. But she is an aspirant character because she still wants the same similar goal to Laura, that she wants to be a reporter. But she wants to be a reporter in, more society news. So it's lifting her out of her station from being a poor girl that works 2 jobs and goes and pays her way through university. So she is looking for her meal ticket, her best life. Well, Laura's just doing Laura. And in doing this, I'm also changing the way that these games are played. It's a little bit more like your hidden object style, that, you're in Lorna's eyes, you're looking around.
Okay.
That's mostly just to cut down on animations.
Yes.
But, it made sense based on how I'm changing the gameplay, that rather than the obstacle being the gameplay is your comprehension of what's going on around you. So the area is littered with items that you can pick up and use on different parts of your obstacles. So, say, for example, Lorna wanted to get through a door. Lorna could find the key. She could open the door with the key. Or, say if she had something that was long and sharp, she could use it, and obviously thin, she could use it to pick her way through the door. She could use something long and slender to pry open the door. If she found a screwdriver, she could take it off at its hinges and take the door off.
So much like real life, you have concocted a way where there are multiple solutions to obstacles.
Yeah, so rather than a puzzle... So most adventure games run on a what most people would call a flag system, where things happen because you have done a specific action with a specific item. This one works a bit differently, where once you put an item on an object, it then looks at the attributes of that item. Like, if it's long, if it's fragile, if it can, break something, if it can, cover something, like, if it's cloth. So it's looking at all those attributes and then saying, is it something that can solve this problem?
Interesting.
Oh, interesting. Oh, wow.
How many attributes do the items have in a sort of typical item?
Currently 24.
Oh.
Because we're talking about, like, it's long, is it heavy, is it light, can it do a twisting action, can it contain something, like, can you put something into something else, can you wear it, can you eat it? So it's all built into this for different puzzles, because part of Lorna's job in this one, because it's a retelling of a very short experience that I made in 2014. So I have slightly done this story before, where Lorna is a waitress and she gets through her day at work, and then a murder occurs at the work. And
oh no!
So this one contains that story and then recontextualizes it. So the people who have played that game, who think that they know what the solution is, will then find it's turned on its head. That it's all part of a bigger thing that Lorna, from that moment, did not realize what was going on around her.
Oh,
I see.
That's to build up and also take out a kind of creepy moment where, kind of like Lorna Bains 2, I had Lorna's professor suddenly profess his love for her in the creepiest way possible by following her home.
Does she react differently than Laura does to this?
No, she doesn't. She kisses him.
Oh, boy.
But how I've recontextualized it in this is that she's already seeing him. She's been not sleeping, but she's been making out with her professor for a while.
Oh my!
But this is also beginning to be suspicious about why he's been interested in her all this time.
Ooh!
So, yes, I'm building a lot of intrigue in there, as well as also trying to create consequences for doing things in certain ways. So, for instance, as we were talking about going through a door, if you had taken the door off the hinges, you might want to put the door back on. Otherwise, someone might say, hey, do you know what happened to my door? And if you, say, for example, there's those notepads where, like you're trying to work out what has been written on the previous page, and you do the with a pencil.
The pencil
yeah.
thing. Yep.
So if you do it with the pencil, it's fine. You can take that page. If you pour ink on that, someone might say, hey, do you know who ruined my book? And then wrote in their fingerprints, Lorna. So, I'm trying to build in consequences for certain actions so that you can't just brute force your way through certain things. I'm also building in, the idea is that this is just the beginning chapter, that the story would pass on from here, including some relationships that you build in this game, and also your money.
Oh.
Because there's also some, there's going to be a point where Lorna's going to want to get into a nightclub. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can get into that nightclub at the moment, but one of them is if you don't have any other way of getting in, you can bribe the guy.
But then you'll have less money for the later chapters.
Yes. Or, even in this game, that since you're a waitress, waitresses work for tips. So, there's a bit of a game there as well to try and earn a bit more money. And since Lorna is a bit more on the crafty side, she can steal things and sell them off to fences at certain points as well.
That's really cool.
Is there a way that our listeners can learn more about this game or perhaps support it?
Well, at the moment, since I'm the only one working on it, really, I do have another person working on the UI art, but otherwise, at the moment, it's all just me. It's more of a passion at the moment, but hopefully things are going to start swinging once I've finalised my move. And but you can go to our website, www.reventuregames.com. Oh, actually, no, it's changed. I've just remembered. It's ReVenture.games. Nice and simple. Snappy.
Yes.
That has all of our previous games and information about our upcoming games. And yeah, I'm considering that maybe at some point in the future we might do another round of funding now that we are further along in the game enough that we can at least show more of it. Before, when we did the funding, it was the idea. And I think that, especially at that time, in that climate, an idea by itself and some graphics isn't enough. You need to be able to start showing gameplay. And we weren't quite that far along at that point. So maybe another round of funding at some point, but at the moment, just passion. And the more people that show me that they're interested, the more it pushes me along as well. To help me by giving me passion, people. Give me your passion.
We'll definitely encourage our listeners to check out Lorna and your site. And hopefully someone can help you out with that.
Passion.
All right. I think we're running out of time here on Square Roots or Sierra Roots.
Yeah, I have one last quick and snappy question, and
sure.
And please take this from your gut, because as I spoke about character with Laura, and I'm going to localize this to one game series. Which protagonist character from the King's Quest series is your favorite one to play?
For me, I would have to go with Rosella, because I played King's Quest VII as a young woman, and at that time, and still today, to no small extent, it's difficult to find games with female protagonists that women gamers can relate to. In King's Quest VII, you actually had two, Rosella and her mother. But for me, Rosella was the one that I most connected with, probably because we were closest in age. And she doesn't want to be a troll.
I couldn't figure out how to pronounce her mom's name as a kid. It's Valanice. Okay. Personally, I also have to side with Rosella because my first King's Quest game was 4. And played that with my whole family. Basically played it together, which was great. And my dad got it from my sister, and it was very fun playing through with all of them. And I just really liked her design and her fun. She sort of accidentally kills people in that game, at least one person.
Excellent.
But she was trying her best. She wasn't really out.
She was trying to save one person in particular.
And she blinds a witch. 3 witches. She blinds 3 witches, right?
Yeah, it's fun. Fun like that.
What about you?
I'm going to have to go with the girls' team as well, although I'm actually not going to say Rosella.
Oh.
Mine is the controversial answer. I'm Queen Valanice.
Oh.
And this recently came, I came to this around the same time that I realized I didn't love Laura's design in her character. Because we often talk about, well, not often talk about, but we should talk about protagonists that are on target. And between Alexander and Graham, they're not on target at all. Like, in King's Quest V, Graham is supposed to be looking for his family, but for the first half of the game, it feels like he's on an antiques roadshow because he talks to dwarves about exquisite artistry of puppets and finds a beautiful, lovely little harp in a cottage that he's like, oh, I love the little harp. And then he just keeps talking about fine artistry of things, and I don't feel like he's all that stressed to get back to Valanice and the kids. despite the fact that chronologically in the game, he had King's Quest 4 is the night before King's Quest 5.
Mm-hmm.
His daughter has saved him, given him this fruit so that he won't die. He's gone for a walk, come back, and the castle is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And bear in mind that he's only been reunited with his son Alexander 2 days beforehand, because King's Quest 4 directly comes after King's Quest 3.
Yes.
Wow, that poor guy.
So I do feel like Graham's not a great protagonist when we talk about his directness in trying to get things done. Alexander's kind of a creep when you really think about the fact that in the 6 months between meeting Cosima for 5 minutes at the end of King's Quest 5, that he's obsessed with her enough to shipwreck an entire crew of his people and just hope that they made it out. And then basically go through systematically every isle of the Green Isles just to follow up this girl that he met for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. They didn't even have a conversation together. It was his dad going, "Oh, this is Princess Cosima." "Oh, Princess Cosima."
Was Edgar a driving part of 7 or not? I never really played 7.
Edgar is there, but at the end of it, it's more that they agree to court. They don't actually decide to marry or anything. I do quite like that, because the whole thing of King's Quest 7 is that Rosella's not ready to be tied down. She doesn't just want to get married. She wants to do adventuring. But at the end, she's like, "Hey, Edgar's kind of hot now. I'm not gonna say no to the hot guy that wants to hang out with me." Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that about her. She does come off a bit flaky and flippant in some parts, where especially when she doesn't want to be a troll, which is understandable. But right after that, it's kind of like, do I get back home to Daventry? No, you know what? I think I'm just gonna hang out here for a bit.
Right.
Whereas
Valenice definitely has responsibilities.
Yeah, Valenice is like, "Yes, I will help you with your shit, but I want to know about what you know about my daughter. Do you know anything about my daughter? No? Well, maybe I can help you and you can give me something that I can then help someone else who might know about my daughter." Mm-hmm. She is always on target.
Have you played the newer King's Quest games, the chapter?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I played those and I enjoyed it quite a bit, and you get a lot more of Valenice. Have you played these at all, Natalie?
I have. I covered it for my channel, and I actually got really angry about how they treated Rosella throughout that game.
Yes, she's really dismissed as a character.
Oh
wow.
God, is she
really?
dismissed. So, there's the element that Alexander has gone missing, and Graham kind of fixates on it over 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And
is this while the son is being kidnapped by the wizard in 3?
Yes.
Okay.
So, he fixates over it, and though, Rosella's there showing that she's very much like him and wants to, interact with him and, do stuff around the castle and all that, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. And then there's the part where, the main context of the game is that Graham is going to pass on his crown to one of his grandchildren rather than his kids, which is, I can understand in terms of Alexander, because Alexander is the king of the Green Isles. Mm-hmm. But Rosella...
He has other responsibilities. Yeah, Rosella is perfectly capable of ruling the kingdom.
And Rosella looked like that she wanted the crown as well. And the moment that she had her son, with the most terrible name, Gart, the moment that she had him...
What?
Yes.
Gart?
Gart. So the grandchildren are called Gart and Gwendolyn. And Gwendolyn doesn't sit right with me either. It doesn't feel like a name that Alexander or Cosima would have picked.
No.
I still reject the name of these grandchildren. And Gart is a dick. Does not feel like a child that Rosella would have brought up.
No, he doesn't.
No. But even Graham says so himself, that the moment that Gart was born, Rosella gave up on the idea of being, getting the crown and getting him ready instead to carry the crown.
Right.
But she's done a terrible job of that as well. So
she has, yeah. And there's a whole sort of chapter that really focuses on the relationship between Graham and Edgar, and again, Rosella is just sidelined in that.
It's just...
Well, my favorite Rosella moment is it's in 4, where she gets converted from her princess clothes to plain clothes, so she'll blend in, and she's kind of bummed about that.
Wouldn't you be?
Just for a second.
I think my favorite Rosella moment would have to be her introduction in King's Quest VII, when she sings a complete Disney princess style song, introducing herself and her motivations.
I remember singing that song to myself in my back garden. We were we had emptied out the pool that we owned in the back garden because it needed fixing, and I would go down in there because it would echo perfectly. Me singing this song across the entire valley of our garden.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And meanwhile, I'd be singing, "I'd want to marry an archaeologist and keep his artifacts warm."
Oh, there's so many things I could just say about the written music of Mark Siebert, who gave us "Girl in the Tower," "Land Beyond Dreams," and Phantasmagoria's credit song, "Take a Stand for My Life Tonight."
Was that his attempt to be Jim Steinman, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can sing you a slight part of the refrain now.
Please do.
Sure.
Gotta take a stand for my life tonight. I got a feeling that things aren't right. And just like, oh, God. I gotta turn to the mirror and lie to myself again tonight.
I have to hear that song again. I barely remember I watched someone play it because I didn't have a CD-ROM at the time. So
I think
I've watched you play it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think you watched me play it.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of your YouTube channel,
where I'm known as Rizulka.
With an S.
Yes, Rizulka. Which is a misspelling of the Rusalka from Quest for Glory 4. It was a university. That's the way my thing came about. Was that it was a university assignment to open up a YouTube channel, and I went, I quite like that Rizulka character from Quest for Glory 4. I don't remember how to spell it.
Was she a good guy or a bad guy?
She was technically the monster class, but if you did the right thing, she wouldn't kill you.
Okay.
So she was a naked lady who just lived in a lake.
Mm-hmm. A lot of naked ladies living in nature in that game, like the tree lady in 2.
Yeah. I think it's a big thing in Slavic mythology that there are naked women in the forest and they all want to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah, just like real life.
Yeah. So the Rizulkas were, women that had been drowned by untrue lovers, and then so any time that they could snag a man into the lake with them, they would drown him back instead. But they were known as a great protector of children.
I like that this apparently was a wide enough problem, the untrue lovers, drowning women, that there is a special name for them.
Yeah.
It wasn't just once or twice. It was frequent.
Well, and it's also not only in Slavic mythology, because there's the Banshee, not to be, even though it's almost pronounced the same thing as Banshee in Celtic mythology, and they were women that had been killed by untrue lovers, but they would walk around and they had like hollow backs and they had fingernails that would suck out your blood.
Ooh.
So it seems spurned lovers causes murderous women.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't you be really?
Absolutely. Keep that in mind the next time you're considering murdering your lover. She will come back and kill you.
And your best friend.
And your best friend, and probably your entire village. Except for the
and
children.
probably your boss, and you'll probably agree to that part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a rental truck that I have to get to, so I think we'll need to wrap up this episode.
Ah, yes. It was a great pleasure in being here. Please have me on again anytime you want to hear my sultry tones.
Thank you
Of
so much for
course.
joining us.
Yes.
Sierra Roots is what we do when the other two members of our podcast cannot join us.
Because they cannot stop us. They aren't here.
No. Yeah, exactly.
We are eternal and infernal.
So we'll definitely let you know the next time we want to talk more Sierra. There's so much more Sierra to talk about.
Oh, yes,
We,
there's always more Sierra.
We could really do a game-by-game deep dive and have years worth of content.
It's true.
Oh,
It's
and then
true.
we can talk about the subsidiaries like Bright Star and Dynamics.
Ooh.
The-
Willie Beamish.
Oh, yeah, Willy Beamish, Rise of the Dragon. Where
Oh, that game is amazing.
Oh, yeah, and what's it called? Your favorite, Manhunter.
Yes, Manhunter.
I have seen you
and
play
we
that.
could talk about
I used to eat pizza
wonder
while
how
watching you play that.
we could talk about Heart of China too.
Ah, yeah. I think that's one of the only subsidiary ones that I haven't played. I've even played like kids typing and spelling. I know a lot about Sierra's Discovery series.
The tree that grew from the Sierra roots is vast indeed.
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for having me on, Vanessa.
Thank you for having me on, John.
All right. And for Sierra Roots, I am John Brandon.
I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Natalie.
All right.